Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Stool podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. This is episode number 15. My name is Robin Lewis from robinlewismakes.com. I'm joined by Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks.
Hello.
And unfortunately, Jordan Crawford from Periodic Furniture Studio is not with us today. Well, he's okay. He's just not in the podcast. We live stream the recording on YouTube every Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time or UTC plus 10, or you can watch or listen to it later on YouTube, iTunes, or SoundCloud. I want to say hello to everyone in the chat. We'll get to your comments towards the end of the show, but feel free to chat amongst yourselves. The idea being that this is also a place for people to meet. So in terms of announcements, a couple of announcements this week. The first, Joey, I don't know if you saw that you were featured in a popular woodworking video on YouTube.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was in a comment, I thought, but I didn't think I was featured in the video.
Yeah, so that comment was from the Stool podcast website. I put out that comment. You were the popular woodworking magazine, which everyone knows has been around for a million years.
Right.
On their YouTube page, they've got something called Popwood Playback segment, or Popwood Playback, which is where they basically look at other creators. And yeah, they mentioned you, and
cool.
Quite a few people in the comments like, "Hey, I know Joey did it." So yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's because my Instagram went crazy for a brief moment, and I was like, "What's going on?" And actually, I think the Wood Night mentioned that there was something on YouTube, but all I found was, I think, Leroy actually saying something about me, and I was like, "Okay, but I don't see why that's driven like 400 people to follow me on Instagram." So I didn't actually see any spike on YouTube. I just saw Instagram spike. So
yeah, now I wanted to ask if you'd noticed anything, because I would have thought, because that's quite a not necessarily a big audience, especially compared to the growth of your channel, but a wider, different, more diverse audience. And that's why I wondered if you might see some new people coming on.
Well, subscribers really has just been kind of steady. Like I say, I haven't really noticed a blimp, but I'll go and check that out later on, because that's always interesting to see what people have to say. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Just on that note, Leroy was actually the one who pinged me to let me know that it was there. So thanks for that, Leroy. I appreciate that. I also want to say hi to Nick from Padula Studios. He got in touch with me just to say, thanks for the shout out.
Same.
He's a listener of the podcast now, so that's pretty cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I said next time I'm in his area, or he's in my area, go and have a hangout. But chances of that are not great at the moment, but at some point.
Yeah. And that's about it for announcements. So let's do a quick...
Did we say what Jordan's doing?
Oh, yeah, actually, sorry. Yeah, that's a very good point. So the reason Jordan is not in the show with us tonight is is it a stage manager or?
Yeah, I think he's like this. I would guess he's stage. And I don't think it's a stage manager, but it would be like the stage carpenter man.
Yeah, he works with the props. Anyway, so he's doing a stage show at the moment. We tried so hard to try and work this out so that he could be, so that he could do the shows with us on Thursday. It just didn't work, which is why from next week, we're going to move the podcast to Monday evenings, same time. And we're going to do that for 4 weeks in a row. So the whole month of March, the podcast will be on Mondays. We hope that it doesn't affect too many people in terms of jumping on. It's just that's the only time the three of us can actually get together during the evenings. And as I say, if it doesn't work, we will be going back to the regular scheduling from April onwards. So,
Jordan may pop his head in at any point, but probably not.
Yeah. All right, so let's hear what you're working on, Joe.
What am I working on? So I finished the kitchen that I was working on, the plywood kitchen, and finished up the video for it. Well, pretty much finished the video. I'm pretty happy with it. And I'm installing that kitchen on Monday, so hopefully I'll get some finishing shots. Well, as finished as I can get. It's not going to have the appliances in it. It's not going to have the bench top, because that's going to be a stainless steel bench top, which is going to be templated after my install. So I'm never going to see the finished job. But I think I've done a slightly different video for this kitchen. So I think it's a bit more how-to than my usual videos.
Would you not consider your videos how-to?
Well, I don't know. Like, I think I gloss over too much, but I also don't want to spend too long just blabbing on about stuff either. So, because I guess right from the start, I've always kind of thought my videos were not for beginners. And that if you're watching my videos to take tips, you're probably already kind of somewhat accomplished and kind of understand what's going on. And you might just be picking out the odd little snippet of goodness. And I actually get some hate from that. I get quite a few comments saying, how do you expect some beginner to do this? And I'm like, well, don't watch my channel if you're a beginner.
Yeah.
It's not really...
Your channel's not helping me fix my motor car. This is ridiculous, yeah.
It's not really what I'm kind of set up for. So I also think that's an interesting opinion that's out there, that all woodworking channels should be basic how-tos.
Yeah, there's almost a standard
perception that I should just be able to Google it and I'll get the easiest how to do it with a skill saw or something. Like, it's not always the case.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. There is this, because we've all been doing it like that, we've almost set this precedence now. And maybe that's why some channels shine over other channels, because, as you say, your channel, you're doing something that not everyone can emulate. Therefore, it's interesting, exciting. And there's just so many people out there doing the same old how to explain, do the same thing.
Tricks, and it's all the stuff you've seen before, to a certain point, I think. So I thought I've spent a bit more time on this video with how-tos, because I feel like I haven't seen a really good... I don't think I've actually seen a kitchen build properly on YouTube. I think a lot of people have done cheap kitchen versions. Like I know Benjamin Ueda did his kitchen build, and I actually watched that with interest, because I thought, oh, here's someone who's going to do like a really nice, easy cabinet job. But it just turned out to be 4x2s and some pieces of plywood.
Yeah, because that was more of just a shelving setup with a
I was kind of like, all right, that's just kind of a really basic shelf. Okay, it works. But so I'm kind of interested to see what the reaction is with this video, because I think, one, if you're not interested in making cabinets or kitchens, then you're probably going to hate it. But I think that it'll be long-term quite a good video for people who are looking for that bit of info, because it's really easy to make these things yourself if you just kind of know how it's done.
Or some basic the ways, the sort of not the tips and tricks, but like the if you know the pitfalls going in, the order of the steps, then it's not too difficult.
No, Ian, there is no pocket screws in my kitchen. Although, funny enough, I could have done with one or two, but I worked around it because I didn't want to use it. So that's coming along. I had someone drop off some old, like 1910 oak, like a vanity dresser.
Yeah, I saw that on Instagram.
And I'm starting to strip it back. So that's interesting. I don't usually do that kind of restoration kind of thing. I don't know, and probably some people have seen on my Instagram, I've been working on this display stand for concrete.
That's what I'm thinking of. That's it, Jen.
And so I was going to have 2 weeks to make this thing, and the walnut plywood veneered walnut plywood, however you want to say it, it just took so long. It got lost in shipping. They said it was delivered to me, and the shipping company didn't know where it was, and I ended up going to a warehouse at the end of my street who often get deliveries from the same supplier. I thought they might have had it by accident. As it turns out, the guys in there knew me. They were like, "Hey, we watch your videos," and so I got talking to the guy in there and found found a bunch, 3 sheets of oak veneered birch plywood that's been in their workshop for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, I'll have that." And so I'm getting that for like the price of just regular birch ply. So that's awesome. I'm going to make my desk out of that. So that's a cool job I've got coming up as well. So.
Oh, so you're not using the oak in place of the
No,
walnut?
I was going to actually. I was about to ring the client and say, "Hey, can we just change to oak instead of walnut?" And then like 3 hours later, the walnut shows up on a completely different carrier to who it was meant to be with. He no idea how it got with them. Anyway, so I've just been rushing through that build. For people who don't know, I've got a sample of underfloor heating in a concrete slab. So I've got this piece of like 1 meter by 500 mil, 70 mil thick polished concrete. It's got water pipes in it. They're going to run hot water through it and heat up the concrete. And they just want a stand so people can touch it at like home shows and things like that.
So you're not seeing the underside, just seeing the top side.
Just the top. But then when the guy came and dropped it off, he was started talking about all this fancy stuff like dark walnut, and they wanted like everything to be like a really nice piece of furniture. And I'm kind of like, okay,
not the same as the original quote.
No, not at all actually. And the price like tripled by the time he left, but he didn't seem to care about it. So yeah, I just finished that this afternoon. I'm dropping it off tomorrow. So the video for that is just about finished as well. So yeah, busy stuff.
What a bizarre thing to show off, because is there any way to see the piping in the concrete?
No, their company makes the heat pumps that produce the hot water. And so I guess they just want to have a piece of flooring there to say, this is how hot your floor could be.
It just seems so bizarre. Like you could just put it on top of a stove plate and it would warm up and it would have the same effect. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying it just seems like an interesting way to.
But it's a really weird thing because what kind of threw me is he said, I want the piece of concrete to be on this 20-degree angle. And I was like, okay, but then you want a lid on it. So then I've got this weird kind of triangular lid. That makes it so you end up with a square box when it's all closed up. And then the lid opens up, which is like a weird triangle shape. And then he said, and the lid needs to come on and off as well. We might not leave the lid on. So then I had to find these hinges, which they have a spring-loaded
hinge and be removable.
Yeah, so they've got a spring-loaded hinge, spring-loaded pin on the hinge, 2 hinges, and you can unclip it and take the whole thing off and then put it back on. But it's just so kind of top-heavy, and like the whole thing is a really weird design, but it's what he wanted. So
yeah, interesting,
strange stuff.
Yeah, customer gets what the customer wants. So yeah.
So you've been mopping, have you?
Yeah. So not too much has actually happened in the shop this week, but yeah, for those of you who don't follow me on Instagram, yesterday Townsville over the last couple of days, Townsville has had this very unique weather system where you have 2 low pressure systems at different heights. We've had one over us for a while, and this upper low pressure system has come over the top, and it's basically, if you look at it from the images from space, it just looks like there's a hurricane or a cyclone over Townsville, and it just slowly crept up on us. Anyway, buckets it down with rain. It's been pouring with rain. We've had, in my area, 200 mil over 24 hours. Our dam has been 15% for like the whole time I've lived here. It's gone from 15 to 70% in a matter of days.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's brilliant because the city needs it. But anyway, when I built this workshop, one of the issues that I always had, and the engineer told me, was that if it rains hard, it's going to fill up. And I took his advice, and I was like, oh, it's fine. It's Townsville. It never rains in Townsville. And yesterday just kept coming and coming and coming and started filling up outside the workshop. And I've got this the threshold into the workshop are these 2 treated pine sleepers. So they're the 50 mil ones.
Yeah.
I use them. They're not very stable, but I knew that there was always an issue with water damage, so at least they wouldn't rot. But that's cool because you get like a 100 mil spacer. And I just was watching the water at 100 mil, 75, 50, and it got all the way up to about 10, 20 mil before it was coming over the threshold. And I was just running around. I was like, and I just ran in here. I've put all my tools onto wheels for this purpose, just in case. And everything from this side of the workshop just got wheeled up to that side because there's probably about a 50 mil fall from one side to the other.
Yeah.
And I wheeled everything up, and and it was this horrible feeling of just watching.
Yeah.
And at any moment, it could just go bloop, and it was into the workshop.
I mean, on the plus side, it's probably only going to happen like once every 5 or 10 years. But
oh yeah, absolutely. Like as I say, since I've been in Townsville, the dam's never gone past 20% full, and it's been like that for a couple of years. So this is record-breaking stuff that we're having. So hopefully. Well, no, I hope that the rain continues, but I just hope that I'm better prepared for it next time. So anyway, so I was sitting here just watching the outside my shop. The water was just coming up, and there was nothing I could do. And then the rain eased off, and I thought, I've dodged a bullet. Awesome. But then what happened was the wall on the low side of the workshop on the outside was under probably maybe a mil of water. And where the expansion joint is between the wall and the old concrete, the water just started seeping in. Awesome. All the cracks on the slab, because this is just a junky old slab. It's not, it's not poured properly. All the cracks started coming up through there. And next thing I knew, I had about 10 mil, 15 mil worth of water at the bottom corner of the workshop. So I thought I'd got around it. But it ended up coming in from a different area. So I need to get that outside waterproofed.
That's not easy actually, because you're going to have to dig that out. Is that what you're going to do? And then
I'm hoping. So what I think the issue is the wall is sitting on the footing.
Yeah. So
the and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that the connection between the wall and the footing is going to be watertight because they built the footing, they built the.
No.
Does the water just come through?
Mortar and blocks are not waterproof.
Okay, yeah, I thought that might be the case.
So in that fact, if bricks stay wet too long, they become very soft and brittle, and they can just crumble apart. So that's why you need to get the water away from them. So over here, in that case, what you would do is you dig down to expose probably the first 100 or 200 mil of the footing, and you put like a torch on membrane, like a bitumen torch on, like they literally burn it on, and it sticks and it covers that joint between the footing and the blocks, and you would come up to just above ground level with that. So you have this big bitumen sheet that's like fixed on, and that will not leak, but it's not cheap either.
Now you talk about a torch on membrane. What's that?
So it's a sheet of like bitumen, kind of felty fabric. It's probably about 4 or 5 mil thick, and they have like gas blowtorch, and they burn and melt the back of the bitumen sheet, and then press it onto the concrete, or whatever it is that's being waterproofed. They do roofs with it as well. And that is 100% waterproof when it's done properly, but it's not the cheapest thing to do.
So I've got the bitumen paint, which is probably not as good, but I assume
it works, but it doesn't fill gaps. It seals. What it's made for is to seal the concrete blocks so they don't suck up water like a sponge over time. But it won't seal a gap in the mortar or little holes and stuff.
But surely if you slap it on thick enough, that's going to...
Well, you could try. I mean, that'd be better than nothing, but it's not nearly as good as a membrane. Yeah.
Well, the actual footing is just above ground level because it runs from one side to the other and the ground slopes. It's actually at ground level, if not a little bit higher. So the connection between the footing and the block, I should be able to get that okay because that never actually sees dirt. It's always clear.
I just wonder, though, because you had water coming up in through the cracks that you have in the flooring, right? So that means there's no plastic under your old slab.
Nope.
So do you think the water is just getting under the footing and saturating the dirt and then just coming up through the crack anyway?
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly what it's doing. So this slab
sealing that joint's not actually going to help a heck of a lot.
Oh no! So the water coming through the cracks that's minor. It's
right.
You know, it just showed. Yeah, it's not like it's pouring out. It's just a bit damp. It's mainly that AbleFlex join that's where I suspect it's coming in.
Right.
So look, by no means is this going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
It's just going to improve it for the unlikely event that it happens again. So I think I'm going to go with what you said. Dig down. Further down on the footing. Come up over probably 2 block high, because that's about as high as it was. Technically, this bitumen you're not supposed to paint over, but I've painted over it in the past, and it does hold. You just put enough coats on it, eventually sticks. And then after that, it's a workshop. It's not meant to be a living area, so it is what it is. Yeah. And funnily enough, the one cool thing about it seeping in is that when the water then receded, all the water left.
Oh, so that's true.
Yes. So I don't actually have a pool now. It's just all damp in here. It's so icky in here. Like, I've got the aircon running to keep it cool. So it's just cold and damp, and it's the most depressing feeling being in here.
Good dungeon.
So apparently this main system is easing off now. So we shouldn't expect any more heavy rain. I believe there's more on the way next week, but who knows if that'll happen. So just like if we can just get like a couple days that I can get some towels and stuff in here to dry it up, it'll be back to normal. And lesson learned. I need to fix all the water coming off this roof. It's got to go somewhere else. I can't let it just land in the yard.
Right.
So that's me. All right. So this week we decided, because Jordan wasn't able to make it, we were just going to dedicate it strictly to questions instead of having a usual topic. So over the week we've had some people submit some questions. Thank you to everyone who did. Really do appreciate it. And I thought we would just start with the oldest one first, and then we'll work our way through. And we'll see how we go with that. So the first one. Sorry, Joe.
No, there's one in the chat too as well. So
yeah, I've got that. So from Trent Baldwin, I'm currently working on building a shaker-style workbench. I want to add holes for dogs or hold downs. What do you suggest for drilling the holes? I'm worried about keeping the holes straight. I believe 19mm holes will allow me to use a commercially available dog. Any suggestions or comments would be greatly appreciated.
Yes. Well, I did mine on a drill press, and if you go and have a look at my workbench video, you see what I did. I glued up my workbench top apart from the front piece that was going to have all the holes and the vise cutouts and everything in it. And so then I could just handle that one piece of 150 by 70 and prop it up on some blocks up at my drill press level. I could make all the do all the holes with the drill press, and then I glued on the last piece onto the tabletop. I think that's the way I did it. Yeah.
Now the dogs obviously have to be as perpendicular as possible, but they don't have to be perfect, do they?
Probably with dogs, ideally. Because they're going to be holding, well, they don't have to be, but it's ideal because when you're clamping with the tail vise, if your dog is leaning away from the vise,
but it's going to have to be a fair bit of a lean for it to pop off.
It could start creeping up. But I mean, it's just one of those. In actual fact, maybe if it was leaning into the vise slightly, it would be even better because it would pull it down the other way. But there's a few ways I've seen guys do. If you're going to do it with like a hand drill, you would just make up, you could make up like a little plywood jig that kind of references on some parts of the drill. So essentially you make like a tunnel where the drill fits down and you drill down with that. The old school way is to use 2 mirrors and put them on the bench and then you can
I've never
reference
heard of
off
this.
both. Yeah, you can reference off both mirrors to make sure you're still plumb.
So are
set
the mirrors on their side, or
you set up a mirror in front of where you're drilling and to one side, and I believe, if I remember correctly, you put a perpendicular line on that mirror. So as long as the mirrors, say if your workbench is level, you put a line down the middle of your mirror, that's going to be vertical. And so as long as you keep your drill bit in line with the lines on the mirror, you're going to stay vertical.
oh wow, I've never even heard of this, but I'm wondering if there's a YouTube video out there with
I'm
that.
sure there's a lot of old boys still doing it, because you use it when you're using a brace and bit, like an old school drill. You've got a lot more time to work out what you're doing and where you're holding it. And with an auger bit, once the bit catches and starts pulling itself into the timber, it's a lot easier to then concentrate on your being plumb. Whereas with a modern battery drill, things happen so quickly that especially again, if you're trying to drill with an auger bit on a battery drill, that thing's just going to plow through so quickly that you don't really have time to start plumbing things up. And that's where you probably really need a jig that's actually going to restrain the drill itself to let it drill plumb.
Yeah, I made that mistake way back in the day when I didn't have a countersink bit, so I put on a big 10 mil bit, and I thought I'll just quickly do that straight through. Yeah. The hole was just trash after that because it just shot straight through.
Run it in reverse.
Ah, yeah, I've heard that actually. I have heard that,
and especially with softwood, just reverse and push hard, and you get the same countersink. Or just actually have a countersink bit.
Yeah, I'd been running mine through. It was either steel or copper, and it had just destroyed it. So I was going for second best thing. I have seen Matthias Wandel. He just uses a block of wood, and he references off that. You know.
You can have a guide. Yeah.
And that's why I asked about how accurate it has to be, because 5 degrees to either side, is that going to make? Because if that's not going to make a huge difference, then you can probably just do that.
For hold downs, I don't think it makes a difference. In actual fact, hold downs work slightly better, I find, when the hole is slightly bigger than the shaft. It can be really tricky getting hold fast out when it's a really tight fit. Especially with, I've got the Veritas hold downs, and they've got a serrated shaft. And when they're new, and it's to give extra grip when it's going through the hole in the bench. And when the hold downs are new, they're very, it's like trying to pull out a rasp, and it can be really difficult to pull it out of the hole if it's a snug fit.
It's like a ring shank nail. It's not supposed to come out. Yeah,
that's right. So
interesting. All right. Well, yeah, Trent, I hope that's close to your answer. I'm actually going to go look up this mirror thing. That's amazing. I can't believe I've never seen this before.
I saw one on Instagram recently as well. Someone doing it. Who was it? Maybe, is it Bench Hadley Furniture? Have you heard of him?
Mm-mm.
I think it was him. He had a picture of a couple of mirrors set up. Yeah, I think it was him, because he's making some. He's making a set of chairs, and I think he had it set up on a specific angle for drilling the holes for chair backs, and he was using the mirror system. I think that's what it was, to drill on a specific angle instead of square.
Oh.
Yeah, that was with a brace and bit as well. So yeah.
All right. So from Rob Parker, we've got, how about wood glues? I noticed you used old Aqua here, Robert. I've never actually said, I've seen it a million times in the bottle, but I've never actually said the name out loud. And Jordan, you use a US1 tight bond.
Yeah.
New Zealand has both Oz and US glues, I guess, Joey. So please discuss brands and reasoning behind your choice. Well, I'll start. I've always just used that Aqua here just purely because that's what I started using in the beginning, and it's never failed. I'm not, no way would I ever endorse it. I'm sure there are a lot better glues out there. I'm sure there's a lot worse glues out there. And every time I think on this project, I'm going to try something new, I get to the glue aisle and I'm staring at all of them and I'm going, do I want to take that chance? Do I want to try it on this? And then just think, nope, which is probably stupid because it is one of the dearer glues, buying it from a hardware store. No. So I use this Acquid.
Oh, the Acquid.
It's a Celly's product.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people use a Sika wood glue.
Okay.
I'm not quite
like a PVA style.
Yeah, it's still a PVA, but I can't remember the exact name of it, but I know it's Sika. And then obviously all the tight bond and stuff. What I really need to do is go and, we've talked about this before, buy the glue in a gigantic jug and then just distill it, because for a small 500 mil, I think I'm spending like close to $30, which is, looking at all the other glues is pretty expensive. Yeah. So yeah, the only reason I've used that is because it's just always worked for me. It's the exterior glue. Again, the mentality is just if it works outside, it's going to work
absolutely
like gangbusters on internal furniture.
I used the same stuff for a long time, and then mainly because I could buy it in 4 liter bottles from the hardware store when I was getting going. It's great stuff. And to be honest, as finally the question is asked, because I was thinking about this today, I have yet to find a difference between Type Bond and the white PVA that we use, the Acquid here. The Type Bond is more expensive here, and that's probably the main reason I stopped using it, because I can get a US gallon for the same price as I can get a 4 liters, which is actually more of the Acquid here. So that's where I started using that, and then I started buying big buckets of the stuff. And actually today I found an old Type Bond bottle that still had it was kind of a third full, and I just filled it up with white PVA on top of that. So now I've got like really mildly yellow glue.
Sorry, so did you say you use the Acquid here as well?
Yeah, I used it. I still got some in the workshop.
Right, okay.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly good, and that's why I say I can't find any difference between Type Bond and Acquid here. It really, it's just PVA glue. I'm
glad to hear you say that, because I've always assumed that I'm just being rinsed by the hardware stores, but I'm getting a less superior glue because everyone uses Type Bond. Surely Type Bond must be the winner.
Yeah, I think there's a perception, because I've actually heard on another podcast someone saying, what do you think about these white PVAs you see on other YouTube videos? And it seems like Type Bond has just been around for so long in the States that that's what everyone thinks of when they think wood glue. There is something called yellow glue, and so this is what I want to differentiate. As far as I understand, one of my old bosses who had a kitchen cabinetry shop, they would use white PVA for everything, apart from when they needed a bit more strength. If there was a crucial little fiddly joint or whatever, they would go to the yellow glue. It was way different than Type Bond. It was like a PVA, but it was very chemical smell, and it was almost like it smelled like thinners. There was definitely something else, and it was not Type Bond, which is so. I think and at the time I was too young to really care about what it was, so I can't tell you what it was. It wasn't really my job, so I was just whatever. So as far as, I just can't see what the big deal is with Type Bond. They've got a few extra products. They've got their long open thing, and they've got 1, 2, and 3, and just
one of the things that I do think Type Bond, and I might be wrong in this, but this is from my understanding, they've got a food safe glue, and I don't know of a food safe Celly's or Sika. But then, having said that, you also hear a lot of people say that once the stuff cures, it's inert. So the idea of glue being food safe is just ridiculous, because it's all the same once it's cured.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I don't know about food safe. I would say that once something has kind of off-gassed, quote unquote, and it's dry, I can't see that unless it's asbestos. It must be fine.
There was a video by that John Heiss did a couple of weeks ago where he was testing wood glues. I think that was
Who was that?
video. John Heiss.
Oh yeah.
And he was talking about the difference between the white and the yellow glue, because I've never known this. And the yellow wood glue has some resins in it, which causes it to dry hard. Whereas the white PVA, and this is something that annoys me with it when I use it, it never dries quite hard. So if you come, when I did my dining table and I had all this glue all over the top from all the joints, you hit it with your belt sander and it just digs into it because it can't. And from that perspective, I really want to try the yellow glue because I try enjoy working with epoxy because you can sand that down.
So I've just been working on a project for the house. I haven't been filming it just because it's too difficult at the moment. It's a bookcase, which I should be filming it, but anyway, I'm not. So I've just glued up a bunch of red oak for the shelving, and some of it was used with Type Bond, which I had left over, and some was white PVA. And this is something I've found previously. I had the same problem where the yellow goes hard and the white is not so hard. But if you leave the white PVA longer than normal, like give it a couple of days before you touch it, and it will go rock hard. It just doesn't happen as quickly. So that's really my only takeaway from Type Bond over the years has been that it goes off much quicker. So for white PVA, I'll leave it clamped for 2 hours, and I could probably get away with Type Bond after an hour.
Interesting. Now, I wonder if that's got a lot to do with the humidity where I am then as well, because I swear this glue was left for days and it never cured hard. This is the Celly's Aquid here. It never, ever went hard, which is obviously in your head. You start thinking, well, then what's going on with my joint if it's not going hard? But maybe that's the humidity. It's just too humid here for the stuff to go off in a couple of days, maybe in 2 weeks. It would then be hard.
There's a difference between a drop, like quite a lot of glue going hard, and the very thin layer that's on the timber. That will go off way quicker than a drop. So that's when I know something's ready to come out of the clamp. If the drop is gummy and pretty hard, then the small piece of glue in the joint is going to be much harder. As long as it's not a really big, deep joint, in which case it needs longer to cure because there's less oxygen getting to it and all the rest.
Yeah. I've just seen something from Ian Beckett. Celly say their exterior wood glue is food safe and recommended for chopping boards, which is interesting because in the adverts, his name's Carl. He was on one of these home reno shows. I can't remember his surname. He's promoting it there, making a chopping board or like a serving tray out of it. And so, it must be food safe. So, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, that's really interesting. I must give this yellow glue a try. Martin was just saying that it would be interesting to do a comparison between the Aquid here and the Type Bond.
I've wanted to do that for ages, actually.
Yeah. All right. So then the next question, Small Fry DIY. That's a really cool name. Hey, Robin, love the podcast. Thank you very much. Would love to know what products to use in Australia to take care of cast iron table saw tops. I'll let you start that one, Joey. I don't actually have a table saw yet, but I have a lot of experience with stuff getting surface rusted.
Let me try to remember the name of this stuff. I've got to try to write it down. Oh God, it's like Pennzoil, but it's not Pennzoil like the car oil. It's like Pennzo something oil. Oh God, it's like a linseed based stuff, and it's for you. So you just wipe it on to your steel surface. Like I'll sand it down a bit, clean it up, and it puts a layer of it puts like a hard film, like almost like a waxy layer on the iron, and it just wears off naturally with use, and you can actually see that it starts kind of dulling off. You lose that kind of glossy look, and then it's time to put another coat on. It takes probably overnight to dry, but it's really nice stuff actually.
Yeah.
I've had a bottle and I've had it for probably 5 years. It just goes and goes.
Penetrol, further fabrication to Penetrol. That name sounds very familiar. I'm sure I've seen it.
Maybe that's what it is. Penetrol, yeah, something like that. It's a little black tin with a stupid lid you can't get off, and it's really got a heavy linseed oil base to it, but bloody awesome. I think they say it's meant to be. You could use it as a primer for painting steel as well.
Well, the Penetrol, I'm sure my old neighbor, a builder, told me about this product that you use to paint on old paint surfaces, and it absorbs into the paint and sticks it to the walls. And that's what you paint on first, and then if it's like a glossy surface, you paint it on, saves you from having to sand it. And I'm so sure that it was called Penetrol.
Right, yeah, could be.
Talked about. Now,
that would be the best thing. Yep.
Just to elaborate on the putting the stuff down on your table saws, I've tried using wax for my jointer and my thickness planer. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it doesn't work well. So this is the type of wax that I'm using. It's just a normal beeswax. Are you supposed to put it on, wait for it to dry, and then buff it, or do you put it on, rub it in?
Don't ask me about wax. I have not had any success. I don't know what it is. I cannot put a wax finish on anything and make it look nice. It just gets like swirly marks. I've tried waiting for it to dry and then buffing it. I've tried buffing it in straight away. I've tried every variant that I've heard of, and I think, to be honest, I think it may be to do with the average temperature is too high to let the wax actually harden off, and it just stays kind of semi-soft. And so the one time I did a tabletop with it, it looked mint until you touched it, and then you just had this big hand smudge across the wax.
Yeah. Well, I've used it once on my jointer, and it worked amazingly. I could have just thrown the boards across, and they would have. I've never been able to replicate it. And maybe, as you say, it's because it's so warm here all the time. It always just stays tacky, and it never fills those voids. Yeah, such bad luck with that.
There is, you can get a dry lube. A bunch of people will make it, and it's actually for this purpose. This isn't a spray can, and so you'd give your steel a clean up and spray the stuff on, let it dry for however long. It's probably only 20 minutes, and it again puts a thin film coat on, which they say won't come off, won't come onto the workpieces. It will stay on the steel. And I have a can of that. I use it every now and then for lubricating the runner on my saw or anything else with bearings or anything. So that is an option. It's nice and easy. Just spray it on and that's it. And various people will make it.
The silicone spray is what I've had the most luck with.
Yeah, but no good in a workshop, man.
No? Why is that?
Because you're putting silicone particles everywhere, and you try and glue silicone together. Like, you're running your timber over something that's got silicone on it, and then you try and put glue on that surface, and you've just transferred silicone onto it.
To be fair, I've always wiped it very thin, but maybe I've just got luck. Maybe I didn't even think about that.
That's the biggest concern. Like, it's great stuff for making stuff slippery, but it's terrible. I know when I was a kid, my friend's dad was a car sprayer, and you were not allowed silicone spray anywhere near his shop, because if you got silicone spray on a car and then he tries to spray over it, this is the end of the world. It's not going to work. So from that point of view,
that's good to know. Yeah, I didn't even
think
of that.
It's a great lubricant, but terrible for anything else.
I must say, I also use that on because up here everything rusts. It's just a matter of time. So like my drill press was out. It was under the house, but outdoors for about 3 months, and my chuck looked like 70 years old. It was just awful. But in regards to the question of keeping your tabletop in good shape, his name's Dirk, Sumo's Project. He's down, I think he's down in New South Wales somewhere. I saw a video where he sort of took care of his rusted table saw and brought it back to up to a good shine. With table saws, do you need to keep it pristine all the time, or should you just expect that sometimes if you don't use it, it's going to rust, and that's fine? There's nothing wrong with it. In other words, don't get too hung up on this idea of making it shiny all the time.
Yeah, I just let mine kind of do what it needed to do. I just didn't like it because at one point I had a leak in my roof, which was right above my saw, and I'd come in the morning and there'd be like this drip pattern of rust starting, and I'd just hit it with the orbital sander. I just didn't generally like it, but also you get to a point where you can feel the roughness. The steel is just kind of doing whatever it needs to do, and I it just is much easier to slide timber across when it's nice and smooth. I guess that's probably it. I don't really.
It's not damaging the steel.
No, I mean I've heard people say like, "Oh, don't put drinks down on my cast iron or whatever." You're like, well, what? It's just a saw. Like it doesn't need to stay looking like a mirror, but you don't want to treat it like shit either. But it's got to be. It's a tool. So yeah.
Where my jointer lives just underneath the side of my aircon, and when I got them out here to come and clean out all of the radiator, they put this big bag underneath the aircon, and then they just get this like water gun and they spray the inside.
Right.
And I said to him, "Do you need me to move that tool? It's not going to get away." No, don't worry. Did his thing, left, and there was just all this black stuff all over the bed.
Awesome.
And I just looked at it and I thought, thank goodness I've caught this now, so it's not going to have a chance to rust or anything. But yeah, you just covered it. So I'll know next time to move it out the way. All right, we've got 2 more questions. So this one is from Trent's Timberworks. I saw Joey using a router to make half-blind dovetails. What sort of bit do you use, and how do you set this up? Would it be better to use a drill press and a Forstner bit to remove most of the bulk and a chisel to clean it up?
Okay. Right, dovetails. Sorry, it always takes me a few minutes to get my head around dovetails. Even now, like it doesn't just happen in my head about which part gets cut which way. Like I always get my 2 pieces of wood and like, right, this bit's gonna look like this, and this bit's gonna look like this. Like, yeah. So half blinds. So you do the tails the regular way. So you're looking at the pins. So that would be like the draw front side. What do? I mark out where the waste needs to be cut away, and with a marking knife or something like that to cut the fibers. And generally, then I'll just set that draw front in on its end, so its end was up in the vise, and ideally you'd put some kind of scrap timber around it, so you have like a flat platform to reference the router off. But sometimes I don't do that because it's quicker not to. So it depends on the depth. I often just use with a small router bit. I think it's a 1/4 inch shank. If the small router bits tend to just have one cutter on them, they're like a one-sided cutter instead of a 2-sided. So I just use like whatever cutter I have that fits really. The only concern would be how deep you're cutting. I tend to not want to cut more than 10 mil deep at a time. It's better to do that in one pass because you've got more material to reference the router on at the top. But if you can't do it in one pass, then obviously you're going to have to do it in 2. But I find it a bit more awkward to come around again and do it. But really, the only adjustment to consider is the depth. Other than that, it's just hold your breath and hold the router really tight.
Could you end up with just a more rubbish cut when you're driving it through like that, or should that not make a difference?
It's actually interesting the way timber, when you're routing the end grain, the timber cuts and you get like lots of tiny, thin, long shavings. It's not like when you're routing on the flat of timber. And so it cuts pretty easily, actually, as long as you don't bury the bit. you just kind of shave away from the front to the back. I find it works pretty good. But it really is just a matter of don't cross your lines and then go back with the chisel. But it just makes it really quick. I mean, I've done it with chisels, and it's just a bit more bloody time consuming. I think you could use a force and a bit as well. It would work. I've never done it because I find the router just works better. Or I can't say that because I haven't done the other one. I find it works easier. Easy for me.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right. I'm not going to weigh in on this conversation because I don't have enough experience with. I don't think I've ever done half-blind dovetails. So, I mean, I know what they are, but I've never done them myself. All right. The last question is from Bill Mansa. Here's one for Joey. What made him go? Well, actually, before I finish this question, anyone in the chat? I know there's a bit of delay, so if you do have any other questions, quickly fire them off now, and then we can try and fit them all in. So, from Bill Mansa. Here's one for Joey. What made him go for the hammer saw over something else? I'm not sure what that's referring to.
My table saw, my new bench saw. It's a hammer. So I did a bit of research on new saws. Now, I don't think I've told the story. So the beginning, it was January 1 of 2017, I decided to buy a new saw. And if anyone remembers, it was October when I actually got it. So I put the order in, long story short, I put the order in for the saw in the beginning of March. And so it took quite a long time for me to actually get the saw. So I did a lot of shopping around Felder, who makes hammer. So if you don't know,
I didn't know that.
Felder is the main brand. Hammer is their lower end versions. So Felder is your full-on commercial stuff. The hammer stuff is slightly less spec'd and made for the smaller shops and home shops.
Still good quality though.
Yeah. So the saw I have is the top of the line for the hammer brand. The next step up would be Felder, which is the first commercial size. They're actually exactly the same. I think they just have different branding for the first step up. So, and the top end of Felder is like $80,000 for a saw. So yeah, it's just you can keep going. So as what I ended up doing was just directly emailing Felder in Germany, or I think they're in Germany. Google translated my email, so God knows how it read.
Some guy in the office was laughing at.
I imagine it was hilarious. So I said, "Look, I want a new saw. I've got a YouTube channel. Help me out." And so this is why it took so long, because they were like, "Yeah, this sounds really cool. What do you want?" I'm like, "I want a saw." They said, "Tell me what you want." So I told them what I want. And then they were just asking like 1,000 questions, like how many views do you get? You know, all the stuff you could imagine. Where are your audience?
Now, is this all over Google Translate as well? Or
no, then they put me on to a New Zealand contact.
Right.
And then he was transferring it back to Germany. And so there's this big kind of delay in getting responses. And so in the end, they said, "You're right, we'll help you out." They gave me a pretty good discount off the saw. And all they wanted is for the saw to be in videos. So that's the easiest thing you can do.
Did they stipulate like how many videos? Or
that's what I thought they were going to do. Because at first they were leaning, it sounded like they were going to just say, "Here's a saw." And I was like, please, this is going to be awesome. But no, I still had to fork out bloody good money for it. But they just said, "We want it in videos." And that's it. So fine, I can do that.
That's pretty cool, because I've heard the Making It podcast guys talk about how they've stopped now because they don't ever want to feel beholden to the tool company. They just don't do tool.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that they're so lenient with it.
Well, it was not, because it's not really a direct sponsorship. It was more like, okay, we'll give you a discount, and we know that you've got a legitimate YouTube presence, and people are going to see it, and that's all they want is exposure. So I'm happy for that. So that's in the end why I ended up going to Felder, mainly because they actually returned my email. But they're bloody good saw. I love it. And if you can afford it, go for it. Like I say, it's not free for me. I still have a large payment to make.
There's a man, I can't remember his name now. He's this German guy. He's fairly young, and he's got a little workshop in his basement. I can't.
Darius, is it Darius? He's got the K3,
but he's got a Felder.
Yeah,
and it was amazing. He said there was one problem with it. It was like some measuring or some like stop block type pin thing that he had to fix.
Okay.
He said, that's it. There we go. Thanks, Rob. Marcus. That's the one. Marcus something or other. And he got, and that was the first time that I'd seen, because I've never actually witnessed a Felder saw in my life. I've only seen them on video. And it was just, man, what a cool looking saw.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they rival the Allendorf style big panel saws at the high end. At the lower end, I think there's definitely a difference between the Felder stuff. But it's little things that don't really matter to smaller workshop people. I could go on, but I'm sure it would really not be interesting.
With those types of saws, do you find that everything around them, coming from someone who doesn't yet have a table saw but will eventually invest in one, all the stuff that comes around that means that there's no point in me getting a high-end Felder, because I don't have, like, for example, I don't have a flat concrete surface to even put the thing on.
Oh, well, neither do I.
And that's what I'm asking. So do you need to be in a certain level with a certain spec shop, certain power, or do you just buy the thing and it's awesome?
I would just, like, if you want to make dead perfectly square cuts and like essentially delete your jointer by using the saw, just go for it, because it makes my life so much easier. Like, it's essentially a drop saw as well. Like, I mean, it does everything you could want it. Anything to do. Takes up a lot of room, but I've actually found we have more space in the workshop because of the way it works. I don't need all my auxiliary tables around the other saw. So I actually have more free space, and I can just slide the slider one way or the other, and it works way better in my workshop.
Yeah. Martin's just corrected me. Marius Hornberger. That is the one that I was thinking, not Marcus. Marius. Close enough, Rob. Because I've been looking at the saw stop, just because I think the technology is good, and I know it's a whole can of worms. But the other reason that I've been looking at that's just because that's something that I could potentially one day afford. Whereas these Felders and these panel saws, I mean, they're just... It's just a stupid one.
I think the K3, which is the smaller version, this must be about 8,000 or something.
Oh, that's not too bad, actually. I thought they all started 15 up.
No, my one is about 15.
Yeah. Must be very cool. But yeah, for someone who's not yet using it to make a living full time, you can't. I mean, that's a car.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There was debates. I tell you, there was debates.
Yeah. All right. So Ian, what saw does George use? I'm not sure.
SCM, I think. SCM, which is a rival to your Allendorfs and your Felders.
All right. Yeah, Jason, buy a secondhand one. That's a good idea. Yeah. All right. So what have we been watching? I'll start this off. There's a channel that I found probably about a week ago called Finnish Carpentry TV. He's doing pretty well. I think he's been around for a fair bit. He's just really good on camera. And he's a carpenter by trade, so he's in and out of jobs. And I find the building aspects of carpentry, instead of just necessarily furniture making, I find the building side quite interesting. But the reason why I got onto this guy's channel was the first video that I watched, he was talking about a real bodge job from the carpenters before. But in the process of explaining that, he kept saying, but I don't want to rag on this carpenter, the previous carpenter, because I don't know what situation he was in. And it was such a refreshing change because I can't stand when I watch videos with professionals, craftsmen, and they just talk rubbish about the person before them and about the work, the quality of their work, and they just go to town on the guy. Because as someone who's still learning a lot of things, like I've done some DIY jobs around the house that, they were pretty subpar, but how else are you supposed to learn?
Yeah, true.
So I'm not saying we should just all accept that poor craftsmanship is okay, but like, I don't want to hear you whinging about it. I'm here to learn. I'm not here to hear about how much better you are than the last guy. Anyway, that's it. That's my little rant. Anyway, Finnish Carpentry TV is very cool, very good at explaining stuff. And if you are a carpenter or in that sort of trade or interested in it, would highly recommend this channel.
Cool. Duché and Wolf. I've been watching these guys forever, but they disappeared for like 2 years. And today I see he uploaded 2 new videos. I've watched one of them. I think what happened is he has shifted. He's moved interstate somewhere in the States. If you don't know, he makes the most outrageous handmade, mostly hand tool furniture. It's the best, actually probably the best quality furniture I've ever seen. It's museum quality. It's just outrageous, and his attention to detail and precision is outrageous. So give them a look. They're back on YouTube. The only thing I guess my peeve about his videos is that he just needs a bit more, give us some more. He puts a lot of still shots in and a lot of captions, and it's just talk or something would be really nice. There's so many people want to.
So from a production standpoint,
and from a watching point of view, it's the video style is very much from 5 years ago, which that's what he was doing. He hasn't really changed his style, which is fine, but it does make the videos tricky to watch because you're like, wait, go back. I want to see that for another angle or not just a still shot. Explain how you did that step. And I understand fully because he's a commercial guy making these pieces to make his bread and butter. But, give us a bit more detail, please.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's me.
All right. So we'll have links to these videos or channels below. So if you guys do want to have a look, if you're watching the YouTube video. Other than that, nothing else from the chat. Joey, is there anything else you wanted to mention?
Nothing that we've only got 2 seconds for, so that's fine.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much to everyone in the chat. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. I really do appreciate it. We'll probably be back to a normal episode next week, but just a reminder that next week is going to be Monday evening. So we do hope to see you there. All right. Well, my name is Robin from robinlewismakes.com. I was joined by Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks. And unfortunately, Jordan Crawford from Periodic Furniture Studio wasn't able to make it tonight, but I'm sure we'll see him next week. All right, guys. Thanks very much. We'll see you next Monday night, sort of the same time, same place.
See ya.